Let us begin our worship this morning with a reading from 1 John. 1 John chapter 4, verses 7 and 8. Beloved, let us love one another, because love is from God, and everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, for God is love. God is love. It's a statement that is not only at the foundation of my faith life, but is also at the center of our faith life here at New Garden Friends meeting. If I was going to pick a scripture passage that best represented New Garden Friends and what we are trying to be as a community together, it would be this passage. This passage urges us to constantly be moving toward a way of living and acting that can stand as a counter narrative to the culture of our country. We live in a world that tells us that money is ultimately important. We live in a world that teaches us that it's most important to be strong and free, independent of all others. And these things can indeed be important, although not really in the way that our culture has taught us. But they can be important to our lives, but they should not be at the foundation of who we are. When we instead center love at the foundation of our lives, it changes everything. And I'm really not talking about commercial Hallmark love. I'm talking about real love, subversive love, countercultural love, empire toppling, binary busting, mind expanding love. Love that allows us to live in those liminal, in-between spaces. Love that challenges us in how we have been taught to be heroes in the world. Love that allows us to see a stranger as a friend, that allows us to move outside of respectability, traditionalism, orthodoxy. Love that challenges us to embrace things that are impossible or incredible, but are true with a capital T. Love that is ultimately justice in action. Love that reminds us of who we truly are. Beloved, resilient, interdependent. I've been thinking often in recent months about how the divine is at work in our world. It's a serious question because for many, many years, Christianity and faith in general has taught that God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and unchangeable. But this belief is not essential to Christianity. And it is not what many Quakers believe. You don't have to believe that God is traditionally all-powerful and all-knowing in order to be a person of faith. And this matters, perhaps particularly right now, because when things are terrible, believing that God is all-powerful and all-knowing can create a challenge within your faith, one that for some people is too hard to overcome and leads them to losing all faith in God completely. Why would God let this happen? It's a question that is so old and so powerful, it has an entire body of theological and philosophical thought dedicated to its study. Theodicy is the study of the function of evil and suffering in our world, and how evil interacts with our understanding of the divine. Can you have an all-loving God in a terrible world where terrible things happen? Now, people answer this question in all kinds of ways, and whatever answer brings you peace and happiness is the right one for you in this season of your life. But I answer this question by going back to this passage from 1 John and its reminder that God is love. God is love. And we know that love calls forth the best that we can be, but it does not insist on its own way. Think about that for a minute. When someone loves you, really loves you well, they help you to be the best that you can be, but they do not control or manipulate you. Love is not about force. It's not about forcing a person to your will or controlling a situation. Love is not coercive. Instead, love is about relationality. It's about how we are in the process of becoming and changing. Love changes with us as we change. Love grows as we grow. Love meets us where we are. Love can change us, yes, but it changes us because it calls forth within us the very best that we can be. Goodness that we may have thought was impossible can be called forth by love. Love is about the bending and breaking open of reality. And I don't mean that in a silly or overly dramatic way, although I know that that's how it sounds. I mean it in a very real and practical way. Think of it this way. The people who you love, really love deeply, those people are beautiful to you. They are beautiful in a way that bends and breaks what society teaches us about beauty. They are beautiful with their wrinkles. They are beautiful no matter the size or shape of their bodies. They are beautiful with their gray hairs. They are thoroughly beautiful to us. And it doesn't matter what society has taught us about beauty being youth and thinness. It does not matter what society has taught us about beauty. The people we love are lovely to us. They are beautiful because we love them. Love busts right through society's standards of beauty. It busts through what we've been taught about loveliness. It disrupts those normative ideas. It shows us a better way. a better way. God functions like that. Why does God allow terrible things to happen in our world? Because God is not a president or a queen. God is not a government or a structure within our society. God is not a boss or a CEO. God is not a company or a business. God is love. And love does not function like we function. Love functions in a way that is different and disruptive to our narratives and our norms. So disruptive that we cannot always anticipate how love will move us or change us. We cannot really categorize or even fully understand it. Love expands in ways that we may find incomprehensible. I remember when I had my first child, he was the most perfect thing I had ever seen in my whole life. And when I was pregnant with my second child, part of me thought, I will never be able to love another child as much as I loved my first one. And that is not true. Love is not a pie where you give away all the pieces and suddenly there's none left. Love expands and grows to envelop everything that it needs to envelop. Love changes us because it holds a mirror up to our face and it teaches us again how lovely and valuable and worthy we are. It shows us the best that we can be. It shows us the person that we are growing into. If we are faithful to how love is whispering to us in our lives. Love is powerful in the singular, but it is world-changing in the plural. And what I mean by this is that love grows within communities that sustain it and nurture it. And love within those communities, that love can transform whole situations. It can even transform institutions, which are very slow to change and transform. Love, when it's shared within communities, it grows wider and wider, changing in many ways the very structure of our world. It can change countries. It can change everything. I have a story to share with all of you about love transforming a situation. As some of you know, I serve on the board of advisors at Earlham School of Religion. It's a Quaker seminary in Richmond, Indiana. And I typically travel to Richmond in order to attend these board meetings, which happen in September. But this year, the board meetings were all held via Zoom over a weekend. They also landed on the same weekend as my daughter's 6th birthday. It's true, she's 6 now. It's hard to believe. Now, I'm someone who takes my commitments very seriously. And I had committed to serving on this board of advisors. But I am also committed to being a caring mother for my children. And so I decided that I was just going to work harder, to make all of the things happen that needed to happen during that weekend. I had board meetings on Friday, But for the first part of the day, when I was not in meetings, I spent all of that time assembling and wrapping birthday presents, pre-prepping for the food, and also pre-prepping cake ingredients. I cleaned my home. I did all the laundry and the vacuuming and all the dishes. I made sure everything was ready for the weekend. Then when I finished with my board meetings at 8 p.m., I worked until late in the night to assemble a very, very large dollhouse that my daughter desperately wanted. It's actually bigger than she is. It's huge. In assembling it, I ended up with 15 extra screws, but it has not yet fallen apart, so I'm just going to call that a win. I had board meetings for almost all of the day on Saturday, my daughter's birthday. So I got up early in the morning to make my daughter the cake that she had requested. She was very specific about what kind of cake she wanted me to make and what she wanted it to look like. Now, I don't want to sound immodest, but I'm a really good baker, and I have very strong cake decorating skills. They're not fancy, but they're strong. I can do basic piping. I can frost a cake nicely. I can make it look good. Well, Saturday morning, I royally messed up that cake. It was so bad. It was so messed up. Actually, everything was going fine until it came to assembling the cake. In my haste to get the cake ready before I started board meetings, I had not tested out the filling that was supposed to go between the layers of the cake. It was a filling that I had never made before, and it was set in the bowl. And then when I started applying it in between the layers of the cake, it was not set anymore. It started running out between the layers of the cake. The layers started moving separately from one another, sliding to different parts of the plate while all of the filling oozed out around the sides. The frosting, too, which I had decided to prep ahead of time, make the day before, was a fancy whipped frosting that I make with homemade pudding whipped into it. I made it the day before, refrigerated it, and then brought it back to the correct temperature outside of the refrigerator. But in refrigerating it and then reheating it, it was just not the same. And it wouldn't pipe using my piping bag. It started to melt off the side of the cake. I won't say anything more about that cake, except that it was just a gooey, terrible, awful mess. I put the whole plate into the refrigerator because it was time to leave to start the board meetings, and I left. I went over to the meeting house office, and I got on Zoom, and I started with my board meetings. And I was so incredibly angry and disappointed with myself because I was going to spend 7.5 hours of my daughter's birthday away from her working. And I had messed up her cake that she wanted so badly. And she was not able to have the birthday party that she wanted because of COVID. I know that a cake may seem like a small thing to all of you, but in my mind that day, that cake represented how I was going to give my daughter a lovely birthday, the birthday that she deserved, even though I had to work for most of the day. That cake represented my desire to be a great mother and a great pastor, to master that work-life balance that every working mother wants to master. And that cake was a hot mess. It was a disaster. But love that day And God, who we know is love, showed up in incredible ways. First, my mother sent a message to me to ask how everything was going. And I told her about all of my cake woes. She, like the good mother that she is, immediately sprang into action and started problem solving my cake problems from New York. And thanks to my mother's encouragement, I rallied. And I ran home in between board meetings and I tried to fix the cake. It involved a lot of scraping, icing, and melted filling off the plate and handfuls of sprinkles. So many sprinkles were on that cake. So many. And we have potted with another family. So we've joined our two families together for the pandemic so that we can safely have interactions with other folks in our home. And that pod family was going to come over for dinner that day and have cake with us. And before the party time, my friend Christy, who's part of our pod family, she texted me about the arrangements. And I called her to tell her how I was a horrible human being. And she sprang into action. And she came up with a number of new ways to help my daughter feel special on her birthday. And then she arrived with her family early so she could spend extra time paying attention to Claire because I wasn't home. She could spend extra time being a mother to Claire on her birthday. But here's the moment that was really transformative. My friend Christy positioned herself so that she could take pictures of the moment that I brought the cake out covered in candles. I wish I could show you all those photos because they make very clear the truth of that moment. There's a photo where you can see my face as I'm carrying out the cake. And you can see my face is completely lit up with love. And there's a photo of the moment that my daughter sees me and the cake, and she is just glowing with joy. She, of course, loved the cake because she's 6 and it's a cake. But what really made her birthday beautiful for her was that she was surrounded by people who adore her, who love her so much. And in every one of the photos from that moment, you can see the faces of everyone there and how they are lit up with love. Love changed that day from just a difficult, stressful day. The friends who showed up and helped change the stress and anxiety of that day into calm and happiness. There was love of parents, my parents, and how they loved me, and how me as a parent, loving my children, how it brought meaning to difficult moments during that day. But most importantly, love held up a mirror to me and showed me a truth that I could not see on my own. Now, I know that this is such an ordinary, mundane kind of example. And as I was putting my message together for all of you, I first shared a very different kind of story. It was one about political change and how love has the power to transform societies. And there are many examples of the way that love transforms groups of people, can transform countries and even our whole world. But the truth is that sometimes it's easiest to see love in our loving relationships with family and friends. Sometimes The most powerful examples are the ones that involve messy cake, because those are the ones that we can relate to most easily. Here's the truth, friends. Things are a mess in our country right now. But still, even in all of the stress and the conflict and the pain and the suffering, the call of our faith remains strong. The call that is love, calling us forward into the best that we can be. The call of love that is subverting what we have been taught to believe and to see in our world. The call of love that gives us tools and insights to face the things that are hard to face, things that are messy and painful and difficult. God is love, and love can change everything. Not by parting the clouds and dropping down a mountain, but in more subtle, more tenacious, more strange and simple and true ways. Love functions in ordinary, extraordinary ways. And all we must do is be attentive to the way that love is whispering in our lives, coaxing us forward into the best that we can be. God's love is a theological statement about oppressive systems failing. God's love is about coups being prevented, about people rising up against tyrants. God's love is a statement about the belovedness of trans people, about the loveliness of countries that welcome refugees and immigrants, about the wholeness that comes from recognizing your privilege and working toward justice. God's love is a theological statement about the ministry of children playing in the rain, and about the beauty in messy birthday cakes. As we head into the week to come, a week that is sure to be a mess in many ways, may we make space for the fundamental truth of our faith. God is love, and all who love know God.